Okay, now we're going to go on to part 2 and 3. So you're going to do these yourselves, but I'm going to give you some hints. So for part 2, there's a couple of things that you might not have seen yet. So first, go to column M, row 52. So in cell M52, for acceleration, you're going to select the units of meters per second squared. So make sure that you select that for the units for acceleration. And let's see what else here. So you can do like before, select the units for time, and you have the data that you'll convert into a graph. You just have to refer back to the last video about how to make a graph, and you're again going to linearize. But here, there's going to be, the graph is going to have some information that I want you to interpret. So I'm going to just do a partial graph as a review. So let's just say that this is the data here. And to create a graph, go to Insert, and then you're going to go to Charts, and you're going to pick Scatter. This is not the full graph. This is just a partial graph here. But here, this one corresponds to acceleration. So acceleration is going to have a quadratic or polynomial order 2 type of relationship. So if we go up here, so for part 2, the graph is going to have a polynomial order 2 relationship or quadratic. So you should get a U-shaped graph. So I'll let you see if you do get that. So you're going to get a U-shaped graph. And when you get the trend line, this is what I want to discuss here. How you're going to interpret the trend line. So you'll create your graph like we did previously with the other two, and you're also gonna label the x-axis. You're gonna give this a title for the chart. You're gonna label the x-axis and also the y-axis. So this I've already showed you, so you can do that. But the next thing is something that might be new to you. So here, let's go ahead and add a trend line. And again, the steps are: make sure that the graph is selected, and you're going to go to Chart Design. And then from Chart Design, you're going to go to Add Chart Elements. And then from Add Chart Elements, you're going to click Add Trend Line. And from Add Trend Line, you're going to go and you're going to select more trend line options. So this is everything that we've seen before. The only thing now is that the name of this graph, it's a quadratic, but Excel doesn't say quadratic. Instead of calling it a quadratic, Excel calls it a polynomial. Oh, I have to zoom out some. So you're gonna pick, instead of quadratic, you're gonna click on polynomial. Oh, excuse me, I picked the wrong one. Zoom out. So let's just repeat those steps again. So to create the graph, click on a data point, chart design, and then add trend line, chart elements, and then add trend line. And you're going to go to trend line options. And for this one, you're going to want, try to zoom in correctly now, so it's this one. Make sure you click polynomial and order 2. So polynomial order 2, that is another way to say a quadratic, and you can see here that the data fits more smoothly. So make sure that you select polynomial order 2, and this is for part 2. I guess this is going to be section C2. Make sure that that is selected, and again, remember that you're going to select display equation on chart. Make sure that that's selected also. Okay. So that's a new bit of information. So you already know how to graph, but for part 2, make sure that you select polynomial order 2. And again, this is select display equation on chart. Now, the next bit of information is that once you've gotten the graph and you have your trend line, so this you'll put the graph here. And just like before, you're going to have to interpret the data. So make sure that you select here, you're going to select, make sure that you select polynomial order 2, that means a quadratic. And the acceleration, so this is asking you for the acceleration. So here, to get the acceleration, is going to be the number in front of the x squared. So you're going to get a different number, but in this case here, this partial case, the acceleration is going to be just a number in front of the x squared. So I'm going to write down 8.7729. So this is not the correct acceleration. I'm just showing you where you're going to get this acceleration from. So that's going to be just the 8.7729. And again, acceleration is going to have units of meters per second squared. It's hard to see, but it's at the bottom here. Other than that, everything is just like part 1 of the graph. I mean, part 1 of the Excel lab. And let's see what else here. So yes, everything else is going to be the same. You're going to linearize the graph. Just like we did in part 1, you're going to put the linearized graph here. And in the part 2, the acceleration is going to be just the slope. So the only new thing is that the acceleration for part 1 was the coefficient in front of the x squared. But other than that, everything else is the same. So the rest of part 2 you can do. It's a repetition of the previous steps. So now let's go to part 3 and fill in some more missing information. So for part 3, go to column M and row 92. So in cell M92, magnetic field is going to have units of Teslas. So from the list, you'll scroll down until you see Teslas. So here, for the distance, also remember that there's options for centimeter, millimeter, and meters. You always want your units in terms of SIs, so make sure that you always convert your units for all the labs in this semester, in this class. Make sure that you convert meters or distances into meters. Okay. Now I'm going to also show you how you're going to, well, this graph here, this is a magnetic field, and that is going to correspond to the last option for the linearization section. So that's going to be a power dependence. So you're trying to figure out, and for part 3, what is the dependence of the magnetic field versus distance, but you're actually trying to find out what this number, so x is going to represent distance, and you're trying to figure out what this number here that x is raised to. This is called a power dependence. So let's see how you're going to do that. So again, I'm just going to make a partial graph. You're going to have to make the whole entire graph. I'm just going to do a partial. So let's just go ahead and make a non-linear graph. So select the data, and then you're going to go to Insert, Charts, and then Scatter. And so put that graph over here. You're going to have to select the entire table, but I'm just doing part of it. And here for this one, let's go ahead and add a so again, you're going to have to label the vertical the title. You're going to have to also label the horizontal axis and also the vertical axis. So, but you've done that we've seen that before, so let's go on to the new part here. So the new part, let's go ahead and try to get the trend line for this one. So click on a data point, or you can just click on a chart and then go to chart design, and then you're going to go to add chart elements, and again go back to trend line, and then go back again to more trend line options. So this is getting kind of long, so let's do it the short way now. So the short way is just to click on a data point, right click, and then add trend line. And here we want the power dependence. And again, make sure that you click display equation on chart. So make sure that the power is selected here, and also make sure that you select display equation on chart. And we'll just move that. And let me also increase the font size. Okay, so for this one, the trend line that you want to select, make sure that you select power dependence, and the growth rate is going to be the number that x is raised to. So here, this is again not the right answer because I made a partial graph. You're going to get a different answer, but the growth rate for you is going to be the number that x is raised to. So here x is raised to minus 1 point, zoom out, it's raised to minus 1.268. But that is not the answer that you want. That's just the example that I'm using here. Just make sure that you have a power dependence and the growth rate is the number that x is raised to. And again, growth rate is going to be unitless. And one more thing is that when you linearize the data in section F3 here, and also in section F2, you don't need to label the horizontal and the vertical axis. All you need to do is to add a chart title, and you don't need to, for all the linearized parts, you don't need to label the x or the y axis. And let's see if there's anything else that's new here. No, that's it. We've completed all of the bits of information, all of the new bits of information for this lab. So the rest of it you can do yourself just by following the previous procedures.